especially in this talk. But so I went to the University of Bristol, graduated there in 2018. I did a law degree. During university, I tried out loads of different experiences, legal, non-legal. Ultimately, just a little summary of my journey. I've had 3 vacation schemes, 3 training contract offers, and I've done 3 paralegal jobs as well. A bit of a rule of 3 going on there. I don't know what happened there, but that's the way it is. So this was a journey that wasn't easy. It took a lot of kind of building myself up from obstacles. It wasn't something that happened overnight, and I'm more than happy to share all of that with you. And at the moment, I run a Instagram page called Sims Legal Mentoring, which provides help to aspiring solicitors. And I also have my own YouTube channel, which shares application advice as well via the name Sims Legal Mentoring.
Amazing. Thank you.
How can I go after that? That was an amazing introduction. So yeah, my name's Amber Parslow. I'm a future trainee solicitor at Baker McKenzie. I secured my training contract this year after completing their virtual assessment centre. I've actually been at Baker McKenzie for just over 2 years now, as a data protection paralegal in their risk and compliance team. So basically I'm working in-house rather than for our clients. I studied law and criminology at university in Cardiff. And I graduated in 2017 now, so a couple of years ago. And it actually took me 5 application cycles before I secured my training contract. So it can take a while, but that's absolutely okay. And I think everyone's journey is really different. So yeah, I'm more than happy to go into more detail about that as well.
Yeah.
I think other things to do. I'm also on the Bake Opportunity Steering Committee. So that's the Baker McKenzie's social mobility focus group. And then outside of work, I'm on the London Young Lawyers Group committee, which is a networking organisation as well.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. Absolutely amazing career journey so far. I can only aspire. So to take us right back, I think it's so nice for everybody to have sort of, not chronologically, but just when you both started becoming interested in the law. Was it just before your A-levels, or was it much before that?
I hate to be that person who says I was always interested in the law, because I feel like you get that a lot. For me, I was always interested in law, but for different reasons. In terms of, I really liked English lit, I really like history, but I think for me, I knew I wanted to study law because I liked essay-based topics, but I think I didn't actually prepare myself for the kind of role of or process of becoming a solicitor. During university, I think very much I was applying to training contracts and vacation schemes because everyone else was.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was kind of the wave. Whereas when I graduated and I started my paralegal experience, that's when I really realized what kind of firms I wanted to go for and why I wanted to be a solicitor. So in terms of that aspect, I realized that quite late in my journey. But in terms of actually wanting to study law, I think it was mainly because I liked those essay-based subjects that I picked to study law in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also one of those people that has always wanted to be a lawyer. As cliche as it is. So I think I was quite young, actually, about 14 or 15. I think it's back in, is it like year 10 or something in school? And then they start saying to you, oh, what do you want to do when you're older? And people said to me, because I'm quite girly, and they were like, oh, a hairdresser or a teacher, because I liked kids as well. So quite, I guess, traditionally female roles. I was kind of, people thought that's what I was going to go down. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with those jobs. It's just that did not excite me. And none of my family kind of were in the professional services departments. It never kind of crossed my mind before, but I can't remember. I think I was very intrigued in kind of the crime documentaries and that sort of thing. So I then did work experience in 2011, and that was at the Criminal Crown Courts and Magistrates, and I got to sit in on some really, really interesting trials.
Wow.
And, as when you're 14, 15, seeing a drug trial, you're like, wow, this is what you see in the movies. So yeah, and then after that, that's why I decided to study law and criminology. But then in my first year, I soon decided that I preferred kind of contract law, and I did previously study economics as well. So I started going towards that commercial side rather than the criminal law side. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey.
Wow, that's so interesting. And then in terms of, it was quite similar for me actually. I've always kind of wanted to do it, something rational to fit with my brain, and then interest through social media and Netflix and everything like that's quite
Mm.
similar. Um, but then in terms, so when you first both got to law school, um, obviously I moved from Belfast to England, so I had that. I didn't know anybody coming here. Was it intimidating for you both when you both started your legal careers? Because I'm just aware that we have quite a few first years as guests as well, and they've obviously were only a week and a half in. Was it both intimidating for you?
It was definitely intimidating. I think for me especially, I was used to at school not coming top of the class, but being one of the most, not most clever, but kind of a clever individual, quite bright. And then I went to uni and everyone was clever, everyone was bright. I was just like, oh my god, what is this? Like, I'm not top of the class anymore. I was near the bottom, and I was just like, what is going on here? So in that respect, it was very intimidating for me because I wasn't used to having that much competition. People in my year group, Eve Cornwell, I'm sure many of you know her. She was in my
Yeah.
year. I used to sit in some of her seminars with her. So I think that can kind of give an idea of how kind of on it my year group was. And I was just there like, oh, I'm not sure whether I'm as, engaged as everyone else was. And I think things like social media definitely didn't help with that. You'd see on social media, on LinkedIn, or I've successfully gained a training contract, or I've successfully gained a back scheme, and you see second year students getting that, and you're like, oh my god, I've not even started applying yet, and
Yeah.
you start thinking that you're really behind. But I think one thing I've really learned in this whole process is you're neither behind nor ahead. You're at the right time for your own journey, and I think that's really important, especially for first year law students. Try not to get caught up in what everyone else is doing and what their journeys are. Just try and focus on improving yourself, because that's the only way you can kind of move forward in your situation. If you're worrying about everyone else in your cohort, then that kind of hinders you in that respect. So I think that's the main bit of advice I'd give in terms of intimidation and dealing with that.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely wish I heard that at the start. Even now, I see my LinkedIn, and yeah, because I'm final year, lots of people have got training contracts, and I'm like, oh gosh, just got a new part-time job, working 10 hours a week, not quite the same. No, I know exactly what you mean. I wish I had that
Talk
advice.
about as well.
Yeah, Amber.
Yeah, I think just to add that really, I absolutely had the same experience of, kind of always being top of the class of in my school. A lot of people that I went to school with didn't actually go to university either. So no one kind of, my family as well had never been, so I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And I'm a very kind of confident and independent person, but when I went to uni in my first year, I was so homesick, and my family were like, what's going on, Amber? But I think it was such a different experience, and I think it's absolutely okay to feel a bit scared and nervous, but don't feel like you're the only person, because I think even those confident people who kind of look like they're, not feeling like that way, they probably are at some point. You're learning so much in this bit of a journey and kind of adulting as well. So yeah, I think just kind of that's fine thinking about that. And I think in terms of, intimidation, I think it's a lot of time it's in your head as well. So just get out there and try and get involved with, various different societies. And as you're doing here, I think speak to as many people as you can, because that's the only way you'll find out, and kind of have that support network. And that would be my best advice there.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. Thank you so much for that. And then following on from that, actually, I think it's really useful if we get to learn like what societies you're a part of, right? Be it law, non-law, because so many non-law societies give you so many transferable skills that you can apply in any walk of life, whatever you end up doing. So what societies did you both take part of, apart from the fact that a law degree is a full-time job? What did you take part in?
Regrettably, I wasn't as involved with my law society, and that was when that intimidation part came in. I like to kind of stay away from all the people who just seem so on it and just had all that kind of legal kind of talk. And a lot of my friends ended up being accounting students, economic students. And I say that as a regret, because I think there is a lot of events that the Law Society puts out. And if I didn't let that intimidation, as Amber said, it is in your head most of the time. And if I didn't let it get to my head so much, I would have had a wider understanding of different firms that I wanted to apply for when I graduated. But in terms of my university kind of society presence, it was more non-legal. So I'm Punjabi, so I was part of my Punjabi society. I was part of like kind of my Brit Asian society at university. I was part of Bollywood dance, which is pretty cool. So it was all very kind of like Indian based on kind of my background. Essentially, that's because I've grown up in quite an area where there was a lot of people of minority ethnic backgrounds, like I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think ultimately I gravitated towards that. Whereas if I went back at university, I feel like I would have diversified my approach a little and gone to societies, maybe sports societies or whatever, just to meet different kinds of people. One thing that I did do that was kind of legal based, and I did this in my final year of university, was getting involved in pro bono, which was really helpful for me in terms of getting that client communication and professional communication early on and handling your own caseload kind of thing. So those are the kind of main things that I was involved in at university. But in terms of key takeaways and advice that I would give now looking back is to try and get involved as much as you can. But of course, make sure you're interested in things that you're interested in as well. Don't just attend a society event just for the hell of it. Make sure you've got that personal engagement too.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, you'd probably be able to offer really good advice on this, because one of the questions we had from the group chat before the event started was, how do people who don't have a great deal of confidence or no confidence at all try and put their best foot forward in uni, and what societies can they join, and how can they be made to feel not at home in uni, but just join and meet as many people as they can?
Amber, do you want to take that one? I don't mind.
You can carry on if you want, and then I don't mind adding.
Yeah, I mean, I think also in terms of kind of handling that confidence aspect, it's okay to stay within your comfort zone sometimes. So gravitating towards people who you've kind of like, in terms of similar, maybe diverse background or whatever, I think it's easier for you to gravitate towards that. So if you maybe start off with those kind of societies, then that kind of helps build your confidence. And then from there you meet mutuals, so friends of other people, and then they might introduce you to something else, and it's kind of a chain reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So try, if it's difficult to kind of join new societies and just go to their initial events, then going to something that you're quite familiar with and then building your links that way is also another way you can go about it. You don't actually have to put yourself into the deep end straight away.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I think so. I can look at it from two perspectives, so from a first year perspective and a third year perspective, from my own experiences. So in my first year, I joined the Cardiff Uni law netball team. So it was like the law and the sports side, but not, completely honest, I was intimidated just going to that, because I went there and suddenly lots of people spoke a lot more eloquently, I can't even speak now, eloquently than me. They were a lot more confident, and I thought I was a confident person. But as soon as I went there, as you said, there's always some people that kind of like in the same boat as you as well, and you kind of can be there together. And we were all newbies, and I think you've kind of used that to your advantage being in first year, because everybody else is new and no one else knows anyone. So I think the best time to get involved is then. And as soon as I went to that first session, it was absolutely fine. Like, I had an amazing time. I found all my best friends from there. We really built a great relationship because we had that kind of bond of law, but also just, more of a fun, informal setting. And saying that, in my third year, I also got involved with another society called the Enactors Society. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it before, but it's basically we work on kind of business enterprises to help kind of an issue in community. So, for example, I worked with some refugees, and we were looking at developing their CVs and getting them some kind of experience on their CVs to help them being in the UK. And being a third year as well, you're kind of like, oh, is this, you feel like you're all new again, because you're like, oh, I've got to go to this new society. But it's absolutely fine. You know, if you need to take one person along with you for support, just to get you through the door, it's fine. But I think it's kind of something you do throughout your career. So, even now, going to networking events in law, like, that's an important thing to do. And it's just that first time, I think, just say to yourself, I can do it this one time. And once you've done it, you'll think, okay, what's the worst that's happened? I've just gained from it. And if it goes bad, that's okay. You can go away from there and thinking, okay, what am I going to do next time to make it better? So you always get better with practice of these things as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think I can't remember who told me this, but one of my friends said that if it goes well, it goes well. And if it goes bad, it's a funny story, which I've always tried to remember.
Yeah, exactly, definitely.
Thank you for that. And in terms of your law degrees, you know, regardless if people do extracurriculars or not, how did you manage the stress of getting all the readings done, going to seminars, the exam seasons, which we will still will have, but I think it's going to be coursework now. How did you manage the stress of trying to have a social life, doing events, and going to law school, and then obviously applying for different jobs?
I think for me, ultimately, I wasn't as great at studying law. I know you might not hear a lot of people saying that, but I actually had two twos in my first year and my second year, and it was only in my final year when I started kind of pulling my weight a bit that I ended up getting a 2-1 overall. And I think when looking back, one of the reasons why I didn't score as highly my first year was because I hid myself into a hole and didn't ask for help. I didn't approach my tutors. I didn't, identify areas of weakness. And by that, I mean, if you're doing practice papers, for example, and knowing from there like what areas are you need to have. And also I think it's really easy to get distracted at university, so what I'd really recommend is downloading kind of productivity apps, or even like studying in short breaks. I think this is really helpful in terms of managing all the workload that you have. So working for 30 minutes, then giving yourself a 10-minute break, giving yourself another 30 minutes to work, 10-minute break. And then for me, what really helped my final year was working in short bursts like that, because I can't sit there for kind of like 4 hours on the end just reading. I have to kind of give myself that incentive at regular intervals. So that's what really helps me in terms of time management, and also just writing everything down, having to-do lists, keeping yourself organized. That really helped in terms of keeping up with different things that you're involved in. Especially my final year, I was president of a society, I was getting involved in pro bono, and I had my law degree on top of that. And also I would say, at university, it's really important, especially if you're first year going on to your second year or your third year, when you can pick your optional modules. For me, I realized I did better in coursework modules rather than examination modules. So in my final year, I picked mostly coursework modules rather than exams, because I knew I performed better in them. So maybe finding out what areas are your strengths and kind of taking that to your advantage, I would say, is really helpful in terms of picking up your grades.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's so true. Amber, do you have anything to add?
Oh, sorry, can you just remind me of the question? I've just gone blank.
How did you navigate the stresses of law school with the social life and applications?
I think that's what I was thinking of. Oh gosh, yes, the stress. I feel your pain. I get stressed. I love revising, but find it so stressful, as weird as that sounds. I remember, I think it's a balancing as well, because I think in my first year, where I was feeling a bit more anxious when I first moved, which I'd never kind of faced before, and homesick, I ended up focusing so much on my studies. First year didn't even count, and I got a first in it, which was great for applications. But I think actually there were so many social situations that I could have gone to, and I was kind of tucked away a little bit. So then my second year, I mean, this shows that my grade dropped down a little bit because I was going out and having a great time meeting everyone. So I think you've got to really think about balance, because university is an amazing experience. Honestly, best years of my life sort of thing. So I think you've got to really maximise it. Saying that, I think you should also think about how you best study. Everyone's so different. Some of my friends loved studying in the library really late at night, whereas I prefer to get up early, work lots in the morning, and then I still have time for my movie at 9 o'clock at night. So it just, it depends how you work. But I think make sure you keep on top of all your lectures and your seminars. So even if I missed a lecture or a seminar, I'd always make sure I still did that work and I had my notes. So then when I then went back to them, there wasn't any kind of gaps in that. And again, I think it just depends. I think I used to have all my notes written up for lectures and seminars, but then I'd move that to a poster and I would try and do colours and pictures, that sort of thing. Then I would try and downsize it again to maybe a revision card. And so it really just depends. But I think try and work out, maybe if you're not sure, just test what works for you and how you best remember. It's also great to work with your your friends. We used to work independently because I think that's really important to kind of get that knowledge into your head. Then we would sit into groups and kind of test each other and just ask each other questions, and that just really helped us to kind of drill it in. But I do think it's good to plan your time, so and be realistic with your time as well. Don't set yourself unrealistic tasks like, okay, I've got this exam coming up and I'm going to get all this done in one day. It's just not going to happen. So I think I got really good at setting what I was going to do for each day, and that's something that is really important to learn before becoming a lawyer as well. But it's definitely important to get outside, have exercise, fresh air, to breathe.
No, I absolutely agree. And in terms of applications for paralegals or applications for firms and everything, you said you had 5 unsuccessful rounds, and Simran, you've done 3 years of lots of many different things. How did you find the stresses of applying for applications? Did you find it easy for stress reasons, and did you feel like you were able to sell yourself in the applications as well as you could have and put all your skills down?
When I look back at kind of the application process, especially for training contracts and vacation schemes, I found it a kind of lonely experience, very kind of, not to be dramatic, but very soul draining, because you would be applying and then you'd get an email and say, I regret to inform you, and you'd get that over and over and over again. And it's essentially there were so many times in the process where I was just sat there thinking, I'm putting in so much hard work. I worked harder to get a TC than I did during my law degree, in my opinion. And it was just like I was working so hard for a goal that wasn't even certain, if that makes sense. It wasn't, confirmed that I would get a training contract. So essentially I did find the process quite difficult to navigate. In terms of how I overcame that was mainly because I just thought that I didn't want to do anything else. I did try accounting for a bit, for 2 weeks, absolutely hated it, and realized that a legal career was what I wanted. So it was good that I explored other options, and if anything, it made me stronger and made me feel like this is the career that is for me. And I think keeping that tunnel vision inside of your head, it really helped. What was the second part of your question?
Like selling yourself in applications, so confidence wise, and making sure that you really are selling the best version of yourself. And because I know a lot of people, including me, are criminal to underselling ourselves, especially as women, because we're not really taught or showed how to sell ourselves really to the full.
I think in terms of the kind of confidence point and kind of selling yourself, what really helped me was actually looking at my experiences rationally as a person, and thinking, okay, you've done this, you've done that, you're not doing too badly. What skills did you learn from these experiences that can actually be translated to the application, to your interviews? I remember one thing that I used to do before my interviews, before my assessment centers, is actually repeat to myself that I have every right to be here just like everyone else. I used to actually repeat that in my head, and that positive mantra then reflected in my interviews because I was able to translate that confidence. I wasn't worried about the people outside. I was actually just, doing my work and doing my thing. And I think as a woman, especially, you are in a male-dominated environment. It's like inevitably with a legal career. I was on a vacation scheme, for example. I was going to talk about this later, but on a vacation scheme for that week, I was the only female and the only ethnic minority. It was 4 people though, so there was 3 boys and then me. And I still like repeated that mantra to myself, the fact that I have every right to be here just like all the rest of these men. I gained my place here, and the firm obviously sees something special in me. It's just now my job to translate that. So when I rationalized those thoughts in my head, that really helped in terms of improving my confidence. So I think adopting a positive mindset is definitely the key. That's what really helped me. So yeah.
Absolutely, that's completely true. Thank you so much for that, Amber.
So as mentioned, I did 5 application cycles until I secured the training contract. So I think looking back at it, in my first year, I think I didn't really understand what I had to do. I didn't understand the process. I didn't really speak to the right people. I didn't speak to anyone, to be honest. I just thought, this is something I've got to do and I've got to figure it out on my own, which is like not true. There's so many people out there, so many resources. So do make sure you maximize that. So that was my first year. Got rejections and thought, okay, fine, upsetting, but I want this. I know I can do it. I've got to university, got to each stage. And then in my second and third cycle, I started being like, oh, okay, can I do this? Am I good enough? I started completely doubting myself. And I actually had like feedback as things like, oh, you're too bubbly. You're too, yeah, just basically saying I was not the lawyer type.
Right.
So I was like, okay, gosh, maybe I can't be a lawyer. But I was like, no, I absolutely want this, and this is exactly what I want to do. And so then in my fourth application cycle, this is when I said to myself, okay, put yourself out there, get involved with certain things. I already had loads on my CV, and that's the thing, is everyone kept saying, you've got so much on your CV, like, why haven't you got a training contract? I was like, good question. But then I think it's because I just wasn't being able to sell myself, and I actually find the whole process very cringe. And I was like, why do I feel like that? I should be proud of everything I've achieved and proud of everything I've done. Until I started getting involved with things where I started to feel a bit more uncomfortable, and then realizing, oh, actually, it's absolutely fine. I was really developing my confidence in myself and stuff like that. So I think previously I would not sell myself in my applications, and I would always focus on my legal work experience. And I would forget about, everything else about me. And there's so much more about me than that. So then in my fourth and fifth cycle, I started talking about other experiences I had, such as my traveling, but being really specific about a situation that could really shine my skills. I also got involved with an organisation called Strive, and they helped me to understand each process and each stage of the process. So what I had to do for the application process, what I had to do for the interview stage, and I had a mentor as well, which was really, really helpful. They, helped me with my, just helped you to see where you were going wrong. And I think it's so important to be self-aware and critical. You really have to put your ego to one side and think, there's something going wrong here, and it's just because I have never done that. And it's just like a skill really to get the training contract and to kind of jump through those hoops. So yeah, I think you have to be your biggest cheerleader. As Simran said, like I was doubting myself in those second and third years, but in the fourth and fifth year, I used to say the same. I say, you've done everything you can. You've done more than enough. You absolutely want this. You're capable of doing this. I was doing a paralegal job, which was similar level to trainee work. Like I knew I had it in me. So it was just more myself, my inner self that had to be there. And then that absolutely, on my fourth cycle, I started getting to assessment centres, and I got really good feedback. It was just, so close. And just, even in my fourth cycle, so I actually applied for Baker McKenzie last year, whilst being an internal candidate, and I got a rejection. As you can imagine, I cried my eyes out. I was very, very upset because, you're very invested as well when you're already there. And so many people have said, oh, you work here, we know you're capable of it, of course you'll get it. But that doesn't always happen. And so some people said to me, oh, they don't value you should leave. And I just thought, no, that's not the mentality. That's where I want to work. That's where I want to be. And if you, even if you get rejections, just kind of use that as a thing to be like, right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that I can do this. And then so what I did was I met up with the partner who interviewed me. I met up with a graduate recruitment who interviewed me. I spoke to them. I got feedback as much as I could. And then I worked on it. And I worked on my weaknesses. As I said, I already had loads on my CV, and I thought, where are my weaknesses here? Because that is where the development comes. And then so then I applied next year and then got it. So you just got to persevere.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I remember last year I applied for Urban Mitchell, and I bossed the written application. I thought, I'm going to put my heart and soul into this, and then got to the video interview and absolutely bombed it. It was you had 30 seconds to prepare a question, and then you had 2 minutes to look at yourself and answer it, and my answers were so circular, and it just didn't work out at all, but I know very well that that's the area that I need to practice on, and I don't really doubt myself or have massive issues with confidence, which I know is a benefit, but that's something I need to work on for this year, and I'll definitely be back with more.
They are tough.
Yeah.
I think that's why rejections are so important as well. They really help build character and resilience in that way. I was rejected from a vacation scheme, so literally thinking that a TC was right at your fingertips and then watching it slip away, it was painful. But at that time, I didn't have the qualities of a trainee. I wasn't ready. I wasn't competent enough. And I'm not surprised that they rejected me either. So then a year later in the next cycle, I then converted my 2 vacation schemes into training contracts as a way of like proving to myself really that, I can be a trainee solicitor, but also just showing myself that, I do now have the qualities of being a trainee, because I spent that whole year improving my commercial awareness, improving my skills, knowing about my skills, and, showcasing those transferable aspects. So yeah, it's really vital in this process, even though it is painful, but I would say it does help with the character building aspect.
Yeah, I think especially as well when you think you've done so well and there's no reason they couldn't accept me and I'm brilliant, tick, 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 I've done everything, and then you get it, and at first I was like, God, why didn't I get that? And then when I went through and I thought, what was wrong with my application? And I'm sure you thought the same. And then I kind of realised what I need to work on, and I think that will help everybody in their journey. And not to say that I wish that I didn't get it, but now that I didn't, I think I can work on that for the future. But I think that's brilliant advice for everyone here who is applying for training contracts maybe next year or the year after, or any position, I think, as well.
I think there's actually a report as well about the trainees who face more rejections at their earlier stage actually become the better trainees in the long run, because as in a career of law, you are going to face challenges. Things aren't always going to go your way. I think you have to solve problems. So I kind of look at the whole process and the whole journey as kind of preparing you for that career. So I think it's beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every future or current trainee has had at least one rejection. Everyone is absolutely. So common. So I think thinking about it in that way can really help in terms of dealing with rejections as well. At least there'll be at least one person. There could be that top partner of top law firm. He's probably been rejected at some point from one certain firm.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's so true. In terms of the firms that you applied for, be it more than one, I think that's would be the case for most of us who ended up going down that route. What did you look out for in law firms in terms of diversity and initiatives, and maybe even also the actual kind of law that you thought you'd end up practicing?
In terms of the actual law that I feel like I could go into, I still have no idea about what area of law I want to go into, apart from knowing that I want to be in a commercial law firm, because areas like family law, criminal law, they didn't really appeal to me as much. They were quite personal. But for me, in terms of the firm, why I went for like Womble Bondington and mainly US law firms was because they had a smaller trainee intake, and because they had that international presence as well, so that wasn't compromised. I'll still be dealing with international clients. Those are the main things that I went for. And in terms of kind of diversity and their initiatives, I feel like it's all well and good to kind of see it from the firm's website, like the campaigns that they've been involved in. But for me, this is why I really liked going on the vacation schemes, because I was able to judge in the firm itself how diverse it was, whether those initiatives that they have on their website, whether they were actually implemented or not. And that's why I think it's really important to go to open days. Obviously in this environment it's difficult to actually attend the office, but the virtual events do give you some idea about whether it's being implemented or not. So that's what I'd really recommend in terms of finding out initiatives, etc. in that way.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, I think mine's similar, to be honest. And just to stress as well, I think when you are talking in your applications, I would always focus first on the work and the area of law and the international aspect of the firm.
Just muted.
No, I was like, I'm talking. I think it is important to focus on that. So when you get the question why this firm, do focus on the work they're doing and the deals and what attracts you to them. Just because you've got to remember that the law firm is a business at the end of the day, and that is their kind of, they need to know that you do like the work that they do, because that's what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis. So I think for me, I definitely wanted a firm who had a big corporate department, but also big departments in data protection and technology, because that's where my experience has been, and I find that area quite interesting. But also like a big employment department as well, because just from where I had work experience or where I studied certain modules at university, that's where my interests lie. However, I do think it's important to still be open-minded about what you want to do.
Yeah.
I think it is good to have some idea of the types of work that you enjoy. So, you'll have some firms that really specialise in immigration, but that's kind of their sole thing. And you might have other smaller departments, but if you're not interested in there, there's no point really going for that firm. And you want to get the most from a training contract at the end of the day, because it's an opportunity for you to almost have like a taster of each seat as well. But I think the best way, my first year, I'm pretty sure I was just applying to firms that had a good reputation. I thought, this will look great on my CV, I should work for them. I wasn't really thinking about what is my criteria, where do my values align with theirs. So yeah, as Simon said, like, go to all these opportunities online. I think I used to really like the Legal Cheek events, because they did kind of a panel discussion first, and it usually be on like a commercial topic. Which was, great at developing commercial awareness, but then you also had the opportunity to network with firms. And if you go on the websites, all law firms will claim to have great departments and great culture, great diversity initiatives. And, until you go there and actually speak to people and attend their events, you just can't really get that feel and idea. And then you start building kind of the picture in your head of like, okay, this is where I will fit in as well, because it's a two-way thing, right? You the firm's got to be right for you, but you've got to be right for the firm as well. So yeah, definitely try and get involved there and just figure out what it is that you're looking for. Don't follow what everyone advises you to. So you might have a mentor, you might listen to a podcast, or you might read a blog, and someone's giving you their opinion from their perspective. I think it's very important. Always have in the back of your mind, okay, well, that's one way, but what is it that actually I want, and how can I get there as well? So
that's so true. I was wondering as well, it's how far you're comfortable with going, but what along your journey up until now, have you felt like you've faced setbacks because you're a woman, because you belong to maybe different identities? I know, Amber, you said that you were too bubbly so you couldn't be a lawyer, and part of me thinks you can't be a lawyer because you're not that sort of straight suit man in a black wear and coming along and not being so rational and focused, which doesn't make sense to me, because I think people that, like clients who want to come to law firms, will want to interact with people like you and not so much with sort of straight talking people. But I just wondered what kind of facebacks you've felt you've experienced, or that you thought you might and you didn't actually face setbacks in those areas.
So for me personally, I'm actually really surprised that they said you were too bubbly, Amber. Like, honestly, that really surprises me, because when with one of my firms, they said, oh, you're really funny, and we think you have banter, and we think that's why you'd be a good fit for the firm. So I think it really does depend from firm to firm. And also that comment really surprises me, because a woman who's bubbly might be like not accepted, but a man who is maybe like a bit more like, who is bubbly might be seen as like confident, and that perception can be different. It's just like when someone calls a man who's like bossy, like just a bit like, he's in control of the situation. But if a woman's the same, then she's bossy. And that's something that really kind of grates on me a little when I see those kind of comments being in the workplace. I've not experienced it myself, but it is something that I've seen around on social media. In terms of like the experiences that I've had personally, there have been kind of microaggressions in the workplace, not ones that have been directed to me, but ones that have been directed to people who are my friends as well. So I think from that, it just comes down to education, really. Yeah. And for me personally, I like to support those who I like to support groups that aren't actually, they might not affect me, but I'm still going to support them anyway. Like kind of LGBT rights, like Black history, like that kind of, those kind of rights. I still want to be able to support that, even though it's not something that necessarily personally affects me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the difference is. And that's what essentially I feel like in terms of tackling those kind of microaggressions in the workplace. For example, it shouldn't only be women who are talking about women's rights in the workplace. It should be, men opening up on that discussion as well. And that's really important. So in that same way, I think adopting that approach when going to law firms is really important. It shouldn't only be that person's job to raise their own rights. I think I've gone off topic there, but that's basically kind of what, that's kind of like my opinion on it. I think ultimately, if you're going to let kind of it's difficult to say in terms of, you don't want to kind of let your qualities hinder you. So a lot of the time for me personally, how I overcame the fact that, on a vax scheme, I was one of the only female on that week. How I overcame that was the fact that, well, this is a difference that I'm going to embrace. If anything, it helps me stand out because I am the only woman on the workplace. If they can't remember my name, they can at least remember the fact that I was the only woman on the workplace. So I think that was really kind of, I could take that to my advantage and kind of think of it in that way rather than something as a negative aspect. I can't change the fact that, I'm the only woman there, but I can, use that and utilize that and embrace it essentially. So I think that's my kind of advice going forward with that.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Amber?
Yeah, so I think, that Bobbly comment as well, just to clarify, was in 2015, 2016. So I do think, that in 5 years, things have changed. And in the law firms, the legal profession, still has a long, long way to go. Don't get me wrong, but I do think there's been a lot of changes and there's a lot more embracing now to diversity. And as someone said, I think using your diversity to your advantage now is absolutely something you should do. Law firms are very aware now that diversity is just good for their business. It's the right thing to do as well, but it is good for their business. And at the end of the day, they've got to get the people at the top on board with it as well. So I think kind of the barriers I've faced, I think maybe the first thing is probably more from a social mobility background, really, but I think it builds into being female as well. It's just the confidence piece. So firstly, I guess it goes to, I didn't know anyone in the profession. I didn't really have that role model. And then everyone I did meet was a upper class white male. And I just didn't feel like there was anyone kind of representative of me. And I think that really can impact your confidence because you think, as I said before, you start questioning, are you good enough to be a lawyer? Is this the industry for you? Can you be yourself as well? So I've even had people, and this is completely unintentional, but I go home, so I'm from Dorset, but originally from Surrey, so that's why I haven't got a strong Dorset accent. But even when I go to Dorset, where I grew up most of my life, they say, oh, you're so posh now. And I'm like, oh God, have I put that on? Have I done that to me? Or is it just, and it might not be, it might just be completely, being in London surrounded by different accents. But it is just that interesting perspective of, have I unintentionally molded myself into something I feel like I should be? Yeah. So even in my first year at university, I used to have a nose piercing and a lip piercing, believe it or not. And really, really blonde hair, bleach blonde. And that's absolutely fine as well. That was me, and that was my, stage at the time. That was me expressing myself. But I went to the law fairs and suddenly I started thinking, no, I can't, I've got to be a certain mold. But I think it absolutely not. Please do not change yourself and think you've got to, be something you're not. Law firms are really, really embracing change. And I think the best thing to do is reach out and find out, speak to people who are from similar backgrounds to you, just to find out that if they have faced certain challenges and you come across that, you know how to handle the situation. I think as well, one other thing to flag is I spoke to so in my team, I've got the Diversity Initiative partner who leads on all the projects and who sits with us. And I used to say to her, I don't know what's wrong when every time I try to speak in front of a group of people, I feel really intimidated and I don't like public speaking. And she just said to me, she's like, stand like a man. And she was like, because suddenly people will kind of respect you that bit more. And so, maybe I before be a bit more timid. But, it's okay to stand up. And yeah, shoulders up and stand like that, and suddenly you feel so much more empowered. And you know, not having your arms crossed, and it's like all those body language things suddenly make you feel so much more confident. But guys just do it naturally, and I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe something in our head. Our society, you know, society's made us think in our heads we should be more timid and things. It's not. You know, be big and bold. Someone said to me, "So take up space on the desk." You know, when you're in a boardroom in a meeting, like, take up that space. And even in seminars at university, I used to kind of hide away and feel like, oh my gosh, I really don't speak in front of all these people. But you know, make a bit of space and be kind of proud of your presence, and really embrace it. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we can all learn from. Even from my perspective, I haven't really climbed the legal ladder yet, and I'm privileged to be white and not suffer from any discrimination there. But even when I've been to so many panel events and board events, and I don't know why, I've always, like I say, I've Englishified myself. I've always tried to hide. I'm from Northern Ireland, if you didn't know, but I've always tried to kind of hide that accent and come across more posh and more like mainland England. And I don't know why. I don't know how it would change anything, but I think I've just learned, yes, okay, to be lawyer I must be posh and come across like wear my nice fancy clothes and my matching shoes. And obviously it's always nice to dress nice, but I think I can do a lot with what I already have, and not to try and I think people might remember me because, I mean, I'm the only Northern Irish person in my year in my course, and I think that sets me apart. So I think even I'm learning as we go here that I need to sort of show my own uniqueness rather than hide my accent.
Yeah. And it's so important, I think, because you can consume yourself with thoughts of your difference in a negative light, but if you actually focus on the positives, you suddenly have such an advantage of just being, and you should be your, as we said earlier, like your biggest cheerleader. And so I think also, like, firms are always thinking, we don't want all these people who have done the same thing because they just think the same way. And especially now they've got different clients, and also they're trying to think, you know, more, clients are demanding more, so they're trying to think more efficiently and innovatively as well. And with that, they need diversity. So you've got to think, what value and what extra value can you bring from your unique experiences and backgrounds?
That's so.
I think you both. Sorry, I was saying you both really hit the nail on the head there in terms of not losing who you are as a person to try and fit a mold of what you think lawyers or law firms are looking for. For example, you know, law firms, there is a bit of a drinking culture in legal society, in like legal firms, but you know, that doesn't mean that you have to drink. If you don't drink for religious reasons, then you shouldn't have to lose that element of yourself just to fit in. I think the same thing goes for in terms of religious backgrounds, or like, you know, being a woman in the workplace. You shouldn't have to adapt yourself and, you know, try and act in a certain manner. Even for me, like, I can definitely relate with the whole accent thing. I definitely don't come from an affluent area. At the time I used to say like a lot. I feel like I still do. So in an interview, actually, one of the interviewers, she said, try not to let that be a chip on your shoulder. In fact, it should be something that you embrace. You know, your accent's your accents. Where you're from is where you're from. You can't change that. And the only thing you can change is the way you react to that and the way you behave towards that. So I think that's really important. I think you both summed it up really well.
Yeah, thank you. As well, to end, I didn't realize that we've got 10 minutes left, but if anybody has any questions, post them in. But I just wanted to ask, because I picked up the both of you. So Sim, I know you have founded your own legal mentoring company, and Amber, you said you were part of one. So what do you think there are any benefits to joining a mentoring scheme, and what do you think you've gained out of either being in one or running one?
So in terms of, there are great benefits in being part of a mentoring scheme, in terms of the fact that you can gain someone else's opinion, someone who's been through the process. They can make the process a lot more honest, practical, approachable, and kind of eliminate those fears that you have. So I think in that respect, it is really useful. I never had a mentor at university. I wish I did. But now that I'm a mentor to kind of loads of people via Sim's legal mentoring, I think it's really fulfilling to be able to give back to the legal community, but also it's really eye-opening in terms of realizing like the different struggles that different people go through, whether it be through confidence or commercial awareness or, you know, different areas. And I think it is really important that for people like me and Amber to be able to give back, because we've been through that experience. And, you know, I wouldn't necessarily call us experts, but we can definitely rely on our own personal experiences. But then saying that, I would also say, take what we say as a pinch, with a pinch of salt, because essentially what we did was what worked for us. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same thing that will work for you. So what you like, as if for someone in like your shoes, with all the students here, I think it's really important to gather as many opinions as you can. But of course, at the end of the day, it's your choice about what opinions you decide to take with more weight and what ones you don't. And you're allowed to disagree with your mentor. If your mentor suggests something, you don't agree with it because it doesn't agree with who you are as a person, or doesn't agree with something else that you've done in your own personal life, then you don't have to take that advice. And I think that's really important to bear in mind if you do decide to have a mentor in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Because I as I mentioned, I was on a scheme with Strive, and they provided a mentor for me, and I remember him. Oh, my background's going really weird. I remember they provided me with they reviewed my application, and I remember thinking, okay, yeah, that's a good point. And thinking, no, I really strongly feel that I want to put this part in there and I want to deliver it this way. Might have tweaked it, but it's okay. As someone said to think, it's okay, I disagree with you. You can do it in a polite way. And I took on board what he'd said, but I'd also interpreted it the way that I felt progressed me as well. People get training contracts in so many different ways, and also not always a traditional route as well. So, just speak to lots of different people. I think the benefits of mentoring is people have been through challenges themselves. Like someone said, we've been through it, so we want to give back. And there's so many free resources. Please do not feel you have to pay for them. There's so much online now, especially on LinkedIn. So I think that's good. It's almost like a support network. And there's so many different ones around there. So we're now running one with the London Young Lawyers Group as well. Simran's running one as well. There's so many. But I just think about you might get matched with someone, and if they're not the right fit, then that's okay. You're not always going to mesh with everyone. That's the same in life. It's the same in work. If it doesn't work, then that's okay. Just kind of step back and thank them for the time. Be polite about it. But yeah, you can walk away from it. I think I actually was running a mentor event at lunchtime today, and just to share some of the key kind of takeaway points was the fact that if you're a mentee, go to your event with the mentor and have a plan of what you want to take away from the session. Have some action points, and remember that the mentor is giving up their time for you to help you. So don't mess them around. It should be an easy and smooth process, and don't just take as well. I think it's really important to kind of value them, so understand the mentor and find out what they've been through, because then you might be like, oh, actually, can I ask you about this, about your experience? So I think it's definitely worthwhile getting involved with mentoring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're trying to run a mentor scheme for women-in-law as well, but as well as helping you decide what firm you want to go to and putting yourself forward for that kind of thing, we're just helping you navigate through law school. So I think having all of us being at least second year and above, we can always offer somebody below not our perspective, but just to tips and tricks to guide them through, rather than trying for them to. I wouldn't want somebody to follow my experience. I think mine's quite good, but just to guide people around how to get the best out of their experience, because everybody's interested in different things.
I think it's like giving options as well. Sometimes the mentee just might not know what their options are, or kind of where to go. So I think it's just thinking. Mentors should not be like, oh, this is my way and this is what you should do. I think it should be, okay, finding out each other and what are the options for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we have any questions at the moment, but just in light of Black History Awareness Month, I wondered if you had any books, podcasts, TV, anything that you're watching, reading, engaging with at the moment that you'd recommend to any of our listeners to get involved with.
My friend recommended a book called Remaking Black Power. It's a book that talks about how Black women actually challenged white supremacy. I haven't read it yet, but I've bought it and I definitely intend to read it. She found it an absolutely amazing book. I think in terms of Black History Month, there are so many accessible sources out there, especially even on Netflix, for example. They've got a whole Black Lives Matter section. The 13th, there's When They See Us. There's so much information out there, and I think that's why in this day and age, it's not good enough to be ignorant, if that makes sense, because everything is so accessible. So when someone says to me, I'm a bit ignorant on this matter, for me that doesn't make sense, because if you wanted to go out of your way to search that, then you would have. That might be quite like a harsh view, but that's just my personal opinion on the matter. But then also another BBC documentary actually that I watched about the Windrush scandal, was Sitting in Limbo. I think it really kind of opened my eyes about the Windrush scandal. So I think that's also a really important documentary to watch on BBC.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I think I've been doing the same on Netflix. I've been, definitely looking at those films. I've also been listening to a podcast called The Breakdown. It's called The Breakdown by Sean King. Sean King? But it's been so good. It's because it's not too long, but it's been so interesting. He doesn't hold back, and I love it. And it's just, I'm finding it really interesting learning from there. So that's probably what I've been doing the most with. And then there's loads of initiatives as well. So I think I've been getting involved with a lot through work. But I think one of the key things is actually to listen to people that you know from particular backgrounds, because we've had, for example, for our work, these workshops where our Black colleagues would come on and actually tell us about those microaggressions that they experienced, or outright racism. And it was so important to listen and just appreciate what you can do if you're from the background, from a completely different background. I think it's so important for us to all use our voices.
Brilliant, that's so true. And then from my perspective, I did read over lockdown when unfortunately George Floyd lost his life. Tragically, and that's just the things that we see are a tiny percentage of the things that go on. That was just videoed. During that, I bought lots of books because I love reading, but during law school never had the time, and I read Me and White Supremacy because I went to a Catholic secondary school which was white. There was no teacher that wasn't white, so I think I had not an hour experience, but I didn't have much a diverse background as I wanted to. Anyway, I read Me and White Supremacy, and it just opened my eyes to, I think, as Simran said, if you want to educate yourself, you will, and I did. And it's still an ongoing process, and I read it, and my goodness, were my eyes open to small little things that I don't believe myself, or maybe I used to think when I was P7 and me and my friends would joke, and good God, I read it, and it really, I just think everybody needs to, there's no excuse now, there's PDF versions on the internet, it's all free, Netflix subscriptions, I think £6 a month, although it could be raised, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think everyone needs to educate yourself. And just before we go, we had one quick question in the chat for Simran, and it asks, how did you practice good time management while doing your LPC?
I think good time management is very, very important with the LPC because of the amount of content that you get. It's absolutely insane in terms of reading content. And I think what really helps me in terms of practicing my time effectively, I'm addicted to my phone, and I know it, and I should do something about it, but I'm not. But one thing I did do during the LPC was I downloaded an app called Forest. So I care a lot about the environment, and here you kind of plant virtual trees, and if you go on another app on your phone, then your virtual tree dies, and that meant a lot to me. I didn't want my tree to die, so I had that app there, and it would have a timer for 2 hours, so I could work solidly, and then go on my phone after that if I needed, then set the timer again. So I think that really helped me in terms of time management, but also, like I said before, in terms of revising in small chunks as well. And also what I'd say is there can be days where you feel demotivated, therefore you can break your tasks down into smaller chunks too. So say if you've got like 80 pages of reading, you can say, well, I just want to read 10 pages of this today, and then I'm going to do something else. And then I'm going to go back and read another 10 pages. And that's how I kind of kept myself motivated and sure that I didn't burn out. I think part of good time management is also, like Amber said before, being realistic, not having like kind of, I'm going to do this much stuff today, because again, that's not feasible, but also within your timetable and within your routine, incorporating break times as well, incorporating those social elements. I was still able to have a social life while I did the LPC, and I think that's because I planned my time effectively, and I knew the importance of effective time management and not burning out. So I think that's how I think practicing good time management involves being very strict with yourself. And for me, it was very much me telling myself, well, I only have to do this for a year. After that, I'm done with the LPC and education. This is a short-term pain for a long-term goal. So I think that's how I kind of kept myself motivated in that sense, and I was strict with my timings in that respect as well.
Brilliant, thank you so much. I don't think there are any other questions, and I'm conscious we've passed the hour, but I just want to say thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. I think it's been brilliant. Thank you to the powers of LinkedIn for me to be able to connect with Simran. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Emma, for tagging me in that.
So powerful. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. We're so glad to have you on, and yeah, I'll be back next week with a different part and a different career, and I hope everybody's learned something from this. I definitely have, and I'll be taking it away with me. But guys, thank you so much for women, thank you so much for your knowledge and your experience and everything like that. Thank
you so much for having us. It's been really great.
No worries. Good evening, have a lovely day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye everyone.